Greetings everybody on the forum. This video is a response to Tom McMahon for his comments on my early video on the sacraments losing their flavour, and also a response to John Edwards' recent post on the coming plenary council and our being grounded in truth. I'm frustrated as hell here with technical problems that are coming out my bloody ears, trying to get connected to the bloody NBN with Telstra, just frustration galore. Can't get any satisfaction over the phone from the people that you ring, getting sent around in circles. And then I have a whole lot of technical problems here with the computer and also at our website, which is separate to do with our secure website, and it's just driving me around the bend. I'm nearly going mental with all the problems. But I'm also going mental with the problems of where this whole fucking church is going. You know, it's going down the tubes, and I don't think this plenary council is going to help anything. You know, on Catholica we keep talking about, you know, the age of the people Rupert Murdoch is trying to communicate to with the Daily Telegraph and his tabloid newspapers around the world. You know, people with a reading age of about somewhere between 7 and 13 years of age. And I read the local diocesan newspapers, and I often wonder there, what is the age range or the intelligence range of the people the bishops themselves think they're trying to communicate to? Or each night I visit the Vatican website to catch the latest news from the Vatican, and I often wonder, what is the audience that Pope Francis thinks he's primarily trying to communicate to? You know what? My sense of Francis is that from his experience in Argentina and his working in the slums and with the poor people, he genuinely loves the poor people and he wants to do something for them. But he also does not understand the situation of our children and young people in the Western world who you know, have a completely different life experience to poor people in the favelas and the slums of Buenos Aires or any country in South America. And the church just doesn't communicate in the language that is needed in the Western world now. You know, what's the future of religion going to be? I suspect it's going to be this smaller, purer church that Benedict spoke of, which is going to be absolutely useless in communicating to any young people in the future. The church is stuffed, completely stuffed. You know, Tom McMahon used to set up the community of Jesus Our Brother, you know, 20, 30 years ago. What's happened to it? It's disappeared off the map. You know, you're all in your 80s and 90s and meet together occasionally. Amanda and I went to a very nice meeting with some of you when we were in San Jose all those years ago. But, you know, I feel we're the same here, useless at Catholica. We don't have a community that, you know, our children would be the least interested in joining. You know, they think we're a lot of old fogies, you know, talking bullshit. You know, it's superstitious nonsense that doesn't relate to their lives at all. How do we turn this around? Kieran on Catholica says he's not interested. He just doesn't think the church has a future. I hope I'm not misquoting him here. But many people feel like that, and I can understand it. I still have a sense that this organisation, which has been in existence for 2,000 years, has accumulated this immense amount of capital, both capital in personnel, capital in financial terms, capital in the real estate and property that it owns, and it could be still doing a heck of a lot of good in our world. But it's all been pissed up against the wall by, this constant childish sort of religion. The sort of religion we were brought up with when we were in primary school, and it's never grown beyond that. It keeps talking about adult faith formation, but when it comes around to doing it, it's all bloody bullshit. It's more superstitious nonsense. Let's get back to the rosary, going to mass and praying to this magician God in the sky, or this magician Jesus in the sky, who's going to reach down, put his hand down and press the buttons that are going to fix the COVID-19 crisis, this pandemic, or suddenly open up the gates and release all these new vocations. It's just fantasy talking like that. But some of the bishops still seem to believe in it. They've been brought up, they haven't ever grown out of a seminary system that is still in the mindset of the 19th or early 20th centuries. And, young people, and most of us have moved on from that. What audience is the church, are the bishops, is Pope Francis, are we trying to talk to? How do we talk to them in intelligent, adult language that people can relate to today? Let me end this video here and I'll come back to it later. This is part 2 of this video. I've had to come back again because of mistakes I made in the first part. Firstly, I want to extend an apology and a further explanation to Tom in the comments I made about the community of Jesus Our Brother. What I was trying to say there is that all of us, I think, have been involved in various initiatives over the years to set up a more responsive parish or church or Christian community. And I think you have much knowledge you could share with us because you were engaged in one of the most avant-garde, exciting experiments 20, 30 years ago to try and set up an alternative community. And obviously it has not succeeded. You're a bunch of elderly people now who still think back fondly on those days, but your children and the community has died. It hasn't survived and prospered. And I think many of us could talk of similar initiatives we've been involved in at our local levels that have likewise not succeeded. And I'd like to hear from you at some stage, Tom, as to why you think these initiatives haven't survived and prospered, and what lessons can we learn from that for the future. So my apologies if that came across the wrong way as a criticism. I was really interested in what knowledge you have to share with us as to why your experiment, which was probably one of the most avant-garde and out there in the United States at the time, why you think it has not gone on to bigger and better things. Because I think that's the question that we're asking when we consider this plenary council underway in Australia at the moment. And it would be good to hear from you and other people who might have been involved with you as to why you think the experiment has not succeeded. Was it because of problems with the institution? Was it to do with your vision and dream? Was it in terms of getting enough people involved who could carry forward the dream of what you had? So let me again extend my apologies. I now want to go on and talk about the posts, or respond to the posts of John Edwards, and also another one from Ray O, which appeared a little later, discussing the plenary council and the future for the church. John Edwards' post was titled "The Survival of the True Church, the Way of Truth," and he was harked back to how the church survived in the Dark Ages through the monasteries, and I presume he meant St. Benedict, who helped to bring the church through the Dark Ages. John goes on to suggest that the modern Catholic universities and theological colleges, both in Australia and overseas, might provide a hope, because there is much discussion goes on in these places of a brighter future, but it all tends to get stifled, and that takes me back to what I was just saying about Tom McMahon's experiment. Why do these experiments keep failing? You know, I think a lot of the problem comes back to the culture in the church, which is summarised in that quote I keep giving from then Cardinal Ratzinger when he put the screws on Hans Kung and withdrew his teaching qualifications or teaching authority, and he described the average Christian as simple and little. I think the church has tended to treat us all as dumb idiots and little children, and that's been one of the major things standing in the way of all reform, and that needs to change. We've got to treat the ordinary people as intelligent and not as dumb and little and simple. And my sense, you know, listening to young people, listening to our own children and that sort of thing, is they don't see themselves in that picture of being dumb, little and simple. You know, our parents perhaps did, you know, because that was the whole culture of the church. And I think that's what Benedict was getting at. And I think many bishops today believe the people are simple and, you know, they should feed them, you know, this out-of-date sort of theology and beliefs, and it's not going to work. You know, the future, as Benedict kept saying, was a smaller, purer church, but I don't think that smaller, purer church of those who are conservative, reactionary, are going to be the future of the church. It's a stupid dream to believe that that element are going to re-evangelise the world. This is the second take of this second part of the video. In the early bit, I was waxing lyrical about that. As I listen to young people today, even though they're not going to church, I think there is in there a deep commitment to this, what I call the spiritual dimension of life, the one that extends beyond the physical, the mental and the emotional into this fourth dimension of these things which are to do with our hopes and aspirations of what sort of society we want to build, what sort of society we want to live in. And I find much enthusiasm amongst young people that they want to build a better world, a better society, a more just society, a more peaceful society. In that earlier take of this video, I spoke about, what I think people are looking for is not so much truth and authenticity. John, in his post, talks about the search for truth, but I think what people are looking for today, particularly young people, is authenticity, which is a slightly different thing to truth. Truth's a very academic sort of word, and it tends to go way above people's heads, whereas what we're looking for is authenticity. What I also had to say, which I said early in the introduction, but I also was saying in the second part of the video, is I have great hopes for this institution and also great fears in that it's going to be taken over by the Opus Dei mob and all these people who believe they alone can read the mind of God and they know all God's rules and laws, and it's bullshit. They don't. I think we're still searching for that authentic understanding of what this Jesus person brought into the world. And I think this authenticity goes to being able to navigate through the challenges we face in life. I've been greatly moved by a little quote that's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church from Gregory of Nyassa, one of the Eastern Fathers of the Church. And he said the goal of the authentic life, of the virtuous life, is to become like God. And I think there's much truth in that. None of us can become God, but we all have this picture in our heads, in our being somewhere, of the ideal person we'd like to be, the ideal sort of society we'd like to live in, the ideal sort of person, the whole person that we would like to become. And this is tied up with this word authenticity, I think, also. And that's what we should be aiming at in this plenary council. The truth is not something that was handed to humankind 1700 years ago when the bishops in Rome signed off on what was the authentic Gospels. God, the divine, this mystery that we call the Trinity, is still communicating to us. Revelation is still occurring. It's occurring through all the atheists in the world, through all the scientists, in the discoveries that we're making in medicine about our own selves, our psychology, our fears and hopes and our aspirations. And we need to come up with a new way of thinking about our relationship to both Jesus and this one that we call the God the Father, or this triumvirate of the Trinity, and to stop thinking in that divine revelation ceased way back in the Dark Ages or before the Dark Ages, in the early years, decades just after Jesus had been crucified and died. Revelation continues on today, and we need to be open to it, and we need to be able to discern what is authentic revelation and what is the bleatings of the Donald Trumps of this world and all these idiots who believe they alone have all the answers to everything. None of us have all the answers to everything. I think one of the great qualities that we all need today is enormous humility. Humility in the face of what we don't yet know, and but also a quest, as Gregory of Nyassa said, to become like God, to aspire to the knowledge, the wisdom, the intelligence of this person who we think of as the perfect being, the one who did have perfect knowledge, perfect wisdom, perfect power, and unlimited power. As I said, we can't become like God, literally, but we can aspire to wisdom, knowledge, and the ability to create a better world and a better society, and for each of us to become more whole. The church has bleated on for centuries about becoming holy, meaning becoming pious and some sort of goody two-shoes. I think that's bullshit. It's a complete abrogation of what Jesus Christ was on about. He was about us becoming whole, and holy in the sense of becoming whole, becoming intelligent, being able to make intelligent decisions, particularly when the choices before us were difficult. And we just had a brilliant example of that, where bishops were faced with the choice as to whether they respond to the people who'd been abused or whether they tried to bolster the institution, and they made the wrong choice. And collectively they made the wrong choice. All of them, virtually, including popes, made the wrong choice. They were trying to bolster the institution rather than sticking up for the people who had been harmed by this institution. Now, that is a big lesson for us, for all of us, because we are all faced with difficult choices in our lives, in our marriages, in our workplaces, and sometimes we have to act as a whistleblower, or we have to call out bad behaviour, and it's often difficult as to whether we try and stick up for the institution or the workplace or our family or whoever it is, or whether we stick up for authenticity and the truth and stand up for it and go out and fight for it. Okay, let me try and save this video. It's taken me a long time to put this together. And that leads me on to Ray's post. Ray was responding to an invitation I extended for everyone to talk about what our expectations might be of this plenary council and for change and reform in the church. He headlined his post, hopefully not too divergent. I don't think it was divergent, Ray. I think that's the sort of discussion that we need to be having and what I was trying to encourage. the challenge we face, I think, is with this plenary council, is that it's likely to be the voices of the ones who've controlled the agenda for so long, who'll be very vocal, but we need to be hearing from the people who've been long reflecting on what needs to happen if this church is to be reformed and is to have a new lease of life. Over the centuries, they've said that, you know, the church is in constant need of reform, and that it has adapted to often very challenging crises that it's faced in the world and within itself. I hope, like you, Ray, that this plenary council might lead to something positive, both for the institution in this country, but as well for the institution globally. As I've already argued, I think it still has much, and we collectively have much to offer to humanity and to the world. We have insights, we have a whole bucket load of insights and wisdom that need to be shared, and it's just a huge pity that the whole thing seems to be going down the gurgler at a great rate of knots at the moment. And I think that would be a tragedy if all that were to be lost or were to be handed over to the people who have largely been responsible for the massive exit out of the pews and the collapse in morale in the whole institution. We need to pull it back from the abyss. So thanks for your post. Again, I refer people to go and read it at their leisure, and hopefully also contribute themselves what their hopes and aspirations are for the world and for this institution and for our little community here. You know, what can we do to further this whole endeavour? Thank you.